The 7 people fired by the Port of Guam this week were fired because of a report written by the Port Board's legal counsel, Mike Phillips and John Bell.
The truth will ultimately come out, gentlemen. I can assure you that. This report is going to do its thing, and when the facts come out of this report, we'll go from there.
So will you send the report to the Attorney General's office?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe the report has been sent already. If I'm not mistaken.
And the spokeswoman for the Attorney General's office, Carlina Charfaros, confirmed for PNC News in an email that the Attorney General has received documents from the port, but she said they are not necessarily a report indicating what the governor's office, has called evidence of corruption at the Port of Guam, she said. The governor's chief of staff, Frank Arreola, acknowledged that he initiated the investigation that resulted in the report after raising a red flag over what he called an unusually high TA, or travel allowance, a request for $70,000.
Sometime around September, if I recall correctly, some travel requests came up to my office totaling just over $70,000. Naturally, that raised a red flag for me. And as a result of that, I kicked it back to my deputy chief of staff because I was on my way out for some medical attention. And as I was gone, this process was going through. And it ultimately turned up. The board took care of it. They tasked their legal counsel to do a report, and we have that report today. So in terms of what my responsibility, my role was, I was an individual who essentially caught something, red flagged something that I thought was not quite right. And the port ultimately looked at it, and here we are today.
The allegations in the report were described by Governor's spokesman Phil Leon Guerrero as being serious allegations and evidence of impropriety and corruption at the port. But yesterday, former Port General Manager Mary Torres, in her statement to the media, said the report was filled with inaccuracies, distortions, and poorly reasoned legal arguments. Torres also accused Arreola of calling her up to Adelup and giving her 3 choices: transfer to the Guam Visitors Bureau, resign, or be fired.
Did Mary Torres present an accurate picture of what happened yesterday?
That's a very good question. In communication, I can speak to a lot of things, and I have many conversations with many cabinet members on a daily basis, talking about a lot of high-level things. You all know that. Her recollection of it and my recollection of it were not the same. But it's a personnel matter, and so that's my only comment on that.
This has been bittersweet for me. You all recall that I appointed all the members of this board. Mary was the manager at the airport and was the manager of this port based on a recommendation that I had to the port board. You know, this was all about we as a team. But as long as we as a team means what is in the best interest of an organization and whether it's a port, and ultimately what's in the best interest of the people of Guam.
Who made the decision here? You or the port board?
I think the important thing is a governor, and I mentioned it before, as a symphony conductor. Everyone has a role. I don't play the bass. What that means is there is a board in place, there is a management in place in many agencies. They have to do their jobs. And what is very dangerous is for a governor to attempt to intervene on areas where that responsibility has been delegated by statute. And again, as far as I'm concerned, a board and a management team have to do their jobs.
So they made the decision, not you.
All these decisions are made and were made at the port, where it should have been.
PNC News has learned that the employee at the center of this controversy is Bernadette Meno. The report, initiated by Arreola and written by the Port Board's legal counsel, led to Meno's firing Tuesday, along with 5 other port employees who are said to have signed off on the approval for Meno's $70,000 workers' compensation claim. Meno has hired an attorney, Curtis Vandeveld, who declined comment today except to confirm that he is representing Meno in the matter of her termination from the port. But what is this $70,000 TA that Arreola red flagged? PNC News has learned that $2,968.76 of it was for travel expenses. That's within the normal range Arreola mentioned. $4,602 is for 15 days of per diem expenses. The total, $7,570.76. The bulk of the $70,000 request that Arreola red flagged was for medical, surgical, and anesthesiological expenses under Meno's workers' compensation claim. and none of it was ever paid out. The claim was made for an accident Meno sustained prior to Torres's arrival to the port. It went up the chain of approval through the port, and when Torres was finally appointed general manager, it reached her desk and she signed off on it. Areola then red-flagged it, and it was never paid out from the coffers of Gov1.
As all the rhetoric is now moving forward through all channels, it's important just to focus on the facts. And I think in the next few days and weeks ahead, the facts will become apparent, and I'll let it stand at that.
Does all this rise to the level of serious allegations and evidence of impropriety and corruption at the port, as the governor's office said 2 weeks ago? Or is it a report that is full of inaccuracies and distortions, as Mary Torres said yesterday? The Guam Attorney General will now have the chance to decide. Kevin Kerrigan, PNC News.